Welcome to Facts Radio, your journey through history begins here. In this episode, we explore the Titanic, triumph, luxury and tragedy. It's a story that begins with ambition and pride, where human ingenuity reaches for perfection, and ends in a night of chaos, courage, and loss that would echo through time. The Titanic was more than a ship. It was a statement, a declaration of man's dominance over nature, technology over fate. But on a cold April night in 1912, that illusion shattered, leaving behind haunting questions that still captivate the world today. Chapter 1: The Dream of an Unsinkable Ship. The dawn of the 20th century was an age of marvels. Electricity illuminated cities, telegraphs stitched continents together, and great iron leviathans conquered the seas. Amid this surge of innovation, a rivalry brewed between two titans of transatlantic travel, the White Star Line and the Cunard Line. Each sought to rule the ocean routes between Europe and America, carrying not just passengers, but prestige. Cunard had the speed. Their ships, the Lusitania and Mauretania, were legends, racing across the Atlantic with unmatched power. White Star Line, unwilling to compete on speed alone, envisioned something grander. Their answer would be luxury, ships so vast and magnificent that they redefined ocean travel itself. In this fierce competition, a dream took shape, a vessel so immense, so sophisticated, it would embody the very spirit of the age. That dream found form in three sister ships, the Olympic, the Titanic, and the Britannic. Conceived under the leadership of J. Bruce Ismay, chairman of the White Star Line, and designed by Thomas Andrews of Harland and Wolff, these ships would be symbols of progress and prestige. The Titanic, the second of the trio, was to be the jewel of them all. From the start, she was surrounded by superlatives, the largest moving object ever built by human hands, stretching nearly 900 feet in length, and rising 11 stories high from keel to deck. Her hull was a fortress of steel, her compartments, fortified and watertight. Engineers claimed she was unsinkable, a phrase that would one day sound like an echo from a tragic prophecy. Imagine standing at the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast in 1909, watching thousands of workers labor under the looming skeleton of this mechanical cathedral. Sparks flew like stars as riveters sealed the Titanic steel plates. The hammering of iron rang out day and night, a symphony of ambition. Each clang declared mankind's growing confidence in his machines. To the world, the Titanic represented triumph, a floating city of opulence and safety. But beneath that confidence lay a fatal flaw, the same human pride that built her also blinded those who believed her indestructible. Chapter 2: Building the Titanic. The construction of the Titanic was a marvel of industrial artistry. At the Harland and Wolff shipyard, over 15,000 men toiled in shifts, erecting the colossal framework. They worked in grueling conditions, scaling scaffolds high above the docks, their tools echoing through the misty Belfast mornings. Steam cranes groaned, rivet guns fired, and the smell of hot metal filled the air. The Titanic's design was revolutionary. She was divided into 16 watertight compartments, separated by heavy steel doors that could be closed remotely. In theory, even if 4 of these compartments flooded, she would remain afloat. This feature would inspire the fateful label practically unsinkable. Yet, few stopped to ask what might happen if more than 4 were breached. Inside, the Titanic was the pinnacle of Edwardian luxury. Her first-class accommodations rivaled the finest hotels of London or Paris. The grand staircase, with its carved oak paneling, wrought iron balustrades, and a dome of stained glass, became an icon of refinement. Passengers could stroll through reading rooms, dine in the lavish à la carte restaurant, or relax in Turkish baths, all while crossing the Atlantic. Below decks, however, the contrast was stark. Third-class passengers, many of them immigrants chasing the promise of a new life in America, slept in shared cabins with iron bunks. Yet, even these quarters were more comfortable than on most ships of the era, a testament to White Star's desire to make Titanic not just magnificent, but humane. One could say the ship itself mirrored the society that built her, divided by class, yet bound together in a shared journey across an uncertain sea. From the aristocrat to the stoker, every soul aboard the Titanic was a thread in the grand tapestry of this voyage. The ship's engines were masterpieces of engineering. Her two triple-expansion steam engines and a low-pressure turbine generated over 46,000 horsepower. Massive propellers churned the Atlantic, driving the Titanic forward with regal steadiness. As each bolt was tightened, each rivet hammered, the ship took on a presence, almost a personality. Workers called her she with reverence, as if she were alive. When Titanic was launched on May 31, 1911, more than 100,000 spectators gathered along the River Lagan. The crowd erupted as the massive hull slid into the water, her white paint gleaming, her name shining in gold letters. Champagne bottles were smashed, cheers echoed across the harbor. Few realized they were witnessing the birth of both a marvel and a tragedy. It's hard to believe, but in that moment, not a single person could have imagined the ghostly wreck she would one day become, resting 2.5 miles beneath the ocean. For now, she was a symbol of pride, progress, and perfection. The embodiment of an era's dream. Chapter 3, A Floating Palace Sets Sail. April 10, 1912. The morning was bright in Southampton, England, as the Titanic prepared for her maiden voyage. She towered over the docks, her four-great funnels stretching toward the sky, smoke curling lazily into the spring air. On the quays, crowds gathered, waving handkerchiefs, calling farewells, watching history in motion. Aboard were 2,208 souls, the wealthy and the hopeful alike. Among them, John Jacob Astor IV, one of the richest men in the world, Isidore and Ida Strauss, owners of Macy's, Benjamin Guggenheim, Margaret Molia Brown, the outspoken American socialite, and countless others whose names history would preserve or forget. Many third-class passengers carried everything they owned, their hearts full of dreams of a new beginning across the Atlantic. As the Titanic's mooring lines were cast off and her engines rumbled to life, a strange mishap occurred. The suction from her massive propellers nearly pulled the smaller ship New York from its berth. Disaster was narrowly avoided, an eerie foreshadowing of the peril to come. But the voyage continued, unshaken. Inside, life aboard was a study in contrasts. In the first-class dining room, crystal chandeliers glimmered above fine linen tables. Dishes were served in 11 courses, paired with the finest wines. Musicians played gentle waltzes as passengers dined and conversed. It was said that even the sea seemed to bow before the Titanic's majesty. Meanwhile, down below, the hum of the great engines was constant. The stokers worked tirelessly in the boiler rooms, shoveling coal into the fiery furnaces that fed the ship's colossal heart. Sweat, soot, and steam surrounded them, their world hidden beneath the splendor above. In the evenings, the decks were alive with laughter and music. Couples strolled under the stars, children played in the corridors, and the band played melodies that drifted softly across the waves. The Titanic cut through the Atlantic like a living monument to modernity. Captain Edward J. De Smith, seasoned and dignified, was at her helm, confident that this voyage would crown his career before retirement. Yet, small warnings began to arrive by wireless, reports of icebergs drifting farther south than usual. The Marconi operators received message after message, but the sea seemed calm, and the air was clear. The Titanic pressed onward, her engines unwavering. Few paid much attention to the warnings. Imagine standing on her deck that night, the ocean stretching endlessly, stars glinting like frost on the horizon. The air crisp, the sea as smooth as glass. It was a world of silence and wonder, and a terrible illusion of safety. Chapter 4, The Night the Ocean Went Still. April 14, 1912. Evening fell cold and calm over the North Atlantic. The Titanic was making good speed, 22.5 knots, slicing through the black water under a moonless sky. The temperature had dropped sharply, and the lookout's breath froze in the crow's nest as they scanned the horizon. No binoculars, they'd been misplaced in Southampton. Just eyes straining against the darkness. At 11:40 p.m., lookout Frederick Fleet spotted a shadow, a massive, ghostly shape dead ahead. "Iceberg right ahead," he shouted, ringing the warning bell 3 times. The order came swiftly, "Hard a starboard." The ship began to turn, but fate moved faster. Beneath the surface, the iceberg's jagged edge scraped along the starboard hull, tearing through the first 5 compartments. At first, the damage seemed minor. The ship barely shuddered. But deep below, icy water rushed through ruptured seams, flooding the forward holds. Within minutes, the Titanic's bow began to sink. Thomas Andrews was summoned. His face turned pale as he calculated the truth: the ship could stay afloat with 4 flooded compartments, but not 5. The unsinkable ship was doomed. Above deck, passengers laughed, unaware of their peril. Some felt only a faint vibration and resumed their card games and conversations. Crewmen went below, investigating the damage. Then, slowly, the realization spread. The Titanic was sinking. Captain Smith ordered the lifeboats uncovered. The night was still, eerily so, the ocean like a mirror. The stars hung bright, indifferent. The crew hesitated, no one could believe it was real. Women and children first, Smith commanded, his voice steady but grim. There were 20 lifeboats, enough for barely half of those aboard. Imagine the tension in that moment, the disbelief, the confusion, the cold that cut to the bone. Families clung together. Some joked nervously, convinced it was just precaution. Others refused to leave the ship, trusting in her strength. But the tilt grew steeper, and the fear spread like fire. As the first lifeboats lowered, many seats remained empty, passengers reluctant to board, unwilling to believe the ship could truly sink. The band gathered on the deck, playing soft hymns to calm the crowd. Their final song, it said, was "Nearer, my God, to thee." The notes drifted across the dark waves, a lullaby for the dying. At 2:20 a.m., the Titanic's lights flickered once, and went out. The great ship rose high, her stern pointing toward the stars. Then, with a thunderous roar, she split in two and vanished beneath the surface. The sound of screams carried over the ocean, then faded into silence. The world's largest ship, symbol of mankind's triumph, was gone. The sea, once still and serene, was now littered with lifeboats and debris. Out of 2,208 souls, only 705 survived. It's hard to believe that something so magnificent could vanish in less than 3 hours. The Titanic story is not just one of tragedy, it is a mirror reflecting both the brilliance and the fragility of human ambition. Chapter 5: The Long Night of Waiting. The ocean had gone silent. Where hours earlier laughter and music had filled the decks, now only the cries of the drowning carried across the still water. Those in the lifeboat sat frozen, stunned by what they had witnessed. The cold was merciless, below freezing, the kind of cold that steals the breath and numbs the will. All around them, the dark sea shimmered with fragments of the Titanic's broken soul, deck chairs, timbers, life belts, hats, letters that would never be read. In the blackness, survivors could still see where the ship had stood moments before, a patch of water foaming with rising bubbles, lit by distant starlight. Then came silence. A silence so vast it seemed to swallow time itself. Many wept, others simply stared. The unimaginable had happened, the unsinkable ship was gone. In lifeboat number 6, Molly Brown urged the crew to turn back and rescue those still calling out in the dark. Few agreed. The fear was that the desperate would swamp their small boats. "We can't just sit here," she cried, but only a handful of lifeboats dared return. Most drifted aimlessly, haunted by the echoes of voices fading one by one. Imagine the helplessness, sitting beneath the cold stars, hearing human cries dissolve into the wind. The sea was vast, indifferent, eternal. And those within it were so terribly small. Hours passed. Hypothermia claimed many of those in the water, others clung to wreckage, praying for dawn. The ocean's surface glittered with ice. The survivors, huddled together, watched the horizon for a light, any light, that might mean salvation. Chapter 6: The Carpathia's Arrival. At 12:20 a.m., distress calls were already racing through the airwaves. The RMS Carpathia, a smaller Cunard liner more than 50 miles away, received the signal. Her captain, Arthur Rostron, was asleep when the message arrived: "Come quick." Engine room flooded. Within minutes, he gave the order: all heat to the boilers, all hands on deck. The Carpathia turned toward the coordinates at full speed through a sea thick with ice. The journey took nearly 4 hours. Rostron ordered lights strung along the ship's sides, lifeboats swung out, blankets prepared, and medical teams readied. Crewmen filled vats with coffee and soup. Passengers were awakened and volunteered to help. Every soul aboard the Carpathia was united by one purpose: to reach the Titanic's people before it was too late. At 4 a.m., the first survivors were spotted, tiny dots bobbing in the gloom. The Carpathia slowed, her searchlight sweeping across the still ocean. Lifeboats began to row toward her. Some survivors wept openly as ropes were thrown down to pull them up. Others were too numb even to speak. "We've been saved," whispered one woman, though her eyes were hollow with disbelief. By 8:30 a.m., all who could be found were aboard. 705 people, cold, soaked, and silent. Captain Rostron gave the order to steer for New York. As they sailed, the Carpathia passed through the debris field, an unending scatter of wreckage, a child's doll, a grand piano lid, a single shoe. The sea had become a graveyard. Imagine the weight of that sight. The survivors watched as seagulls circled over what was once a floating palace. Some cried softly, others prayed. Rostron, a man of faith, ordered a service on deck, a prayer for the souls now beneath them. The ocean stretched endless, unbroken, and beneath it, the Titanic slept. Chapter 7: The World Wakes to Tragedy. When news reached land, confusion reigned. Early reports claimed the Titanic had collided with an iceberg but that all passengers were safe. Newspapers rushed to print reassuring headlines. Families gathered at ports, expecting telegrams or the sound of approaching ships. The truth arrived slowly, and then, like a hammer blow. By April 15 afternoon, word spread: the Titanic had sunk. Shock swept through Europe and America. How could the greatest ship in the world, the pride of modern engineering, vanish on her first voyage? Telegraph offices were besieged by relatives seeking names. Crowds filled the streets outside shipping offices in New York, Southampton, and Belfast. When the Carpathia finally docked on April 18, thousands lined the pier in silence as survivors stepped ashore. Some clutched blankets, others photographs of loved ones lost. Reporters shouted questions, flashbulbs popped. The world had never witnessed grief on such a global scale. The Titanic story transcended nations and classes. It was as if a collective dream had been shattered, the illusion that progress alone could conquer nature. In the days that followed, newspapers printed long lists of the dead and the saved. Women and children first became a phrase of both heroism and sorrow. The tales of self-sacrifice, of Captain Smith going down with his ship, of the band playing to the end, of Ida Strauss refusing to leave her husband's side, became legends overnight. But there was anger, too. How could such a ship sail with so few lifeboats? Why had warnings gone unheeded? In parlors and pubs, in offices and churches, the same question echoed: how could this happen? Chapter 8: The Investigations Begin. In the wake of catastrophe, governments demanded answers. Two major inquiries were convened, one by the United States Senate, led by Senator William Alden Smith, and another by the British Board of Trade. Survivors, officers, and crew were summoned to testify before crowded galleries. The hearings became front-page theater, the entire world hanging on every word. J. Bruce Ismay, managing director of White Star Line, faced public outrage. Many accused him of cowardice for surviving when so many perished. He defended himself, saying he had boarded the last collapsible lifeboat after helping load others. But the damage to his reputation was irreversible. He became a symbol, not of villainy exactly, but of the moral failure of the age's arrogance. The inquiries painted a picture of complacency. The Titanic carried lifeboats for only half those aboard because regulations, outdated by decades, were based on tonnage rather than capacity. The ship had been traveling at near maximum speed despite repeated iceberg warnings. And the wireless operators, exhausted from relaying passenger messages, had dismissed several crucial alerts as non-urgent. The hearings also revealed moments of extraordinary humanity: officers who stayed at their posts until the end, passengers who gave up seats to strangers, engineers who fought to keep power flowing so others might see to escape. The Titanic's tragedy was not only technological, it was deeply human. The outcome of the investigations changed maritime history. New laws required lifeboats for all, 24-hour radio watches, and international ice patrols. Out of loss came reform. But for many families, justice was little comfort. They wanted not laws, but the return of those who would never come home. Chapter 9: Echoes Beneath the Waves. As years passed, the Titanic slipped from newsprint into legend. Songs were written, memorials raised. Survivors aged and died, yet the fascination never faded. The wreck itself lay hidden for more than 7 decades, 2.5 miles below the Atlantic, unseen, untouched, like a myth half remembered. In 1985, oceanographer Dr. Robert Ballard and his team finally found her. Using deep-sea submersibles, they captured haunting images of the Titanic's bow emerging from the darkness, eerily intact, resting silently on the seabed. Her name, still legible, glowed faintly beneath layers of rust. It was as though time itself had paused to preserve her. The discovery stunned the world. The myths were replaced with reality: delicate porcelain, a pair of boots in the silt, chandeliers still hanging in ruined ballrooms. Cameras revealed the ship's final pose, broken but dignified, a monument to both glory and grief. It was like visiting a grave, Ballard later said. You could almost feel the presence of those lost. Since then, expeditions have returned, mapping every inch, preserving artifacts, and creating digital reconstructions. Yet debate rages: should the wreck be disturbed at all? To some, it is sacred ground, to others, a historical treasure that must be studied before it's lost to corrosion. The ocean, relentless, slowly consumes her. Imagine descending through pitch darkness for 2 hours, then seeing that immense shadow appear, the Titanic's bow looming out of the abyss. Even in ruin, she commands awe. The sea has claimed her, yet her story still breathes through every bolt and beam. Chapter 10: The Titanic in Memory and Myth. The Titanic has become more than a ship, she is a symbol woven into culture, literature, and film. Her name evokes both wonder and warning. Artists, writers, and filmmakers have reimagined her countless times, each generation finding new meaning in her tragedy. From early silent movies to the sweeping epics of the modern age, the Titanic remains a canvas on which humanity paints its hopes and regrets. For many, she represents the end of an era, the death of the Edwardian dream that progress could conquer all. The First World War would follow only 2 years later, shattering what innocence remained. The Titanic sinking, in hindsight, feels like a prelude to the century's darker chapters. Yet amid sorrow, her story also glows with light, acts of courage, compassion, and selflessness that remind us of the best within humanity. The image of a band playing as the ship sank, of strangers helping one another into lifeboats, of final goodbyes whispered beneath the stars, these are not merely tales of death, but of dignity. Today, museums around the world hold pieces of her, china, keys, letters, silent witnesses to that night. Visitors stand before them in reverent quiet. Some see tragedy, others see the unbreakable human spirit. The Titanic's legacy endures not because she sank, but because of how deeply she touched the world. Her memory reminds us that technology may advance, but humility must guide it. Every innovation carries the echo of that cold April night, a whisper that says, remember the cost of pride. Closing summary. More than a century has passed since the Titanic vanished beneath the Atlantic, yet her story still feels alive. Perhaps because it is not merely a tale of steel and water, but of people, of dreams, mistakes, courage, and love. The Titanic mirrors us, our brilliance, our ambition, and our vulnerability. When we gaze at the stars over the same ocean today, we might imagine those souls still journeying somewhere beyond the horizon. Their story endures in every lifeboat regulation, every radio distress signal, every act of empathy in the face of disaster. The Titanic's loss reshaped maritime law, but it also reshaped hearts, teaching generations that progress without caution can lead even the proudest creation to ruin. Yet out of the wreck came something enduring: remembrance. Memorials rise in cities around the world, flowers still drift on the waves each April. The Titanic remains both tragedy and triumph, a monument to human aspiration and the price it can demand. So, when you hear the word Titanic, remember not just the ship, but the world it carried, the laughter on deck, the courage in chaos, and the lessons carved forever into history. This has been the Titanic, triumph, luxury, and tragedy. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. If you made it this far, you're the reason we can keep going. Please subscribe and help us continue sharing these stories with the world.